Well, today is a work day. Not too exciting of a video, but I am off to IR number 7 at Cheslatta Lake. And it is the motherland of the Cheslatta people, which is my native band. So it's kind of a special thing when us members get to go out there, because it's our motherland. It's a beautiful place to be. But yeah, show you guys what it's like out there. Just getting into Cheslatta Carrier Nations territory. Went from Untitled Lake Forest Service Road to the Utsani Forest Service Road. Now we're on our way to Cheslatta Lake. One side's black, one side's red. Can't really see it, but it's a nice drive out here. The Untitled Lake forest fire went through here, and I can't remember when, 2012 or 13 or something like that. But yeah, it burned all of this up. Quite the drive to get out here. Sorry about that banging, I got pots and pans in the back. We're down here today for a barbecue for the youth. There was a crew of about 6 of us. We fixed this bridge last year. It was just rotted out. Yeah, that was a fun project. Got to come down here every day for about a week. Here we are, Cheslatta Lake. Here we are at IR number 7. This is the motherland of the Cheslatta people. Here's my boss and my mama. It's a beautiful place to be.
Going through now epidemic. So the people abandoned this area down at Utsik and Tedachek as far as year-round villages, and came up to their villages at Cheslatta Lake and Cheslatta. They already had places here, but they concentrated year-round habitation once again here. And again, in the early 1860s, smallpox came back this time it was province-wide, and there's reports it probably caused 60% of the First Nation people in British Columbia to die as a result of smallpox. It's a disease that gets into your body and your blood, and it causes your face to break out in pustules, and it's a very painful, very, very quick death.
That looks like the thing that you're holding. It looks like a Fortnite, not Fortnite, Star Wars ball.
Oh yeah. This cane belonged to Chief Marvin Charlie, and every time he gave talks throughout British Columbia and Canada, he always carried this cane. So when the smallpox came in the 1860s, that's when the missionaries came into the interior of BC. And they came to Cheslatta. Chief Louis lived here. Chief Louis was born in around 1867, about the time of the second smallpox. And this is an actual picture of Chief Louis, his brother Baptiste, and the Louis family, the Jacks, who lived right down the lake and then over at White Eye Lake. And the day this picture was taken, Skin Tai was there with his son Robert. So I'll pass this around for a closer look. That was 110 years ago. This photograph was taken in 1911. It was taken right over there by the cemetery. But if you look close, you can see the dress that they had, the footwear. These snowshoes were a unique design by the Cheslatta people. They had a 90-degree up-turned toe on them, and on the top of the toe, they used to hang dinglebobs, they called them, or jinglings, and they were made out of bright cloth. So when they're walking through the heavy white snow, those flashes of color kept them from going snowblind. So another thing in this picture is, this was taken in December, is the char hanging up drying on the racks. Cheslatta Lake is well known for its char, where in the main stem, Utsa Lake and reservoir, there are no char.
Now you just gotta let it dry.
Another very important fish species in the background were what the people called umam. And we think they are pygmy whitefish. And when the flood happened, the umam disappeared from Cheslatta. But we're going out at the end of September, and we're going to Blue Creek, Cats and Narrows. Oh, hi, Stefan. Hello. And Tetachuk Lake, because there's reports of possible umam out there, and we want to capture them and reintroduce them into Cheslatta. So, without boring you on a lot of history, the people were very well established here. They got along well with the non-native people who came in here about 110 years ago, 115 years ago. And the Cheslatta, by accounts we got from the non-native settlers, really helped the new settlers reestablish themselves on this new land. The Alcan Aluminum was a big aluminum company based out of Montreal. And after World War II, they came and they dammed up the Nechako River and as a result, they dried up the upper Nechako completely. So Ottawa and Victoria got together and says, we got to do something to keep the Nechako alive. So they came out to the east end of Cheslatta and built a dam at the outlet of all this water that used to run east. And it was about a 25-foot dam. And the water, it only took them 8 days to build this dam. And the water started rising, and only then did Alcan and Indian agent come in to Cheslatta and basically knocked on people's door. Mr. and Mrs. Cheslatta, I'm from the Aluminum Company of Canada, and this is the Indian agent from Vanderhoof. And we're here, we regret to inform you that a dam has been built on your lake, and it's going to slowly rise, and within a few weeks you're going to be underwater. Therefore, you're going to have to move. And of course, people were shocked to hear that. They couldn't understand why they would have to move. Well, there was people in the community that, in order to believe this, every night they stuck a stick at the water line. The next morning when they woke up, that stick would be underwater a little bit. They would move the stick up higher. The next day, sure enough, the water was rising. And it was 2 weeks later that the people gathered down at Belgachek and had a meeting with Alcan and DIA, and they were told, you have to move. There's no decision to be made. You have absolutely no rights. You are an Indian people under the charge of the federal government, and what we tell you is what you're going to do. And if you don't agree to move, we're going to get the law to come out and move you. And that's exactly what happened to your ancestors. Is on April 21st, 1952, the people walked out of their homes forever. The people were promised that they could come back that summer and get the rest of their belongings and everything they left behind. But when they left in April, they could only carry what they could carry on their backs. So the people left, and unbeknownst to the people, Alcan hired contractors to come in, and they burnt every house, every village that existed at Cheslatta, both here at Belgachek and at the west end where the Edmonds lived. And this is a picture of what the village looked like over between the two creeks. So,
You got a question, Mike?
that,
What happened to the dam?
the dam was used for 4 years.
Was it destroyed?
And then Alcan, once the Skins Lake spillway became operational, the Alcan went down there and blew it up. So this dam was only used for 4 years. And in the meantime, the Cheslatta people, 70 years later, they still don't live here.
Why don't they live here?
Well, when the people got up into the Grassy Plains area, they eventually bought land with their own money. And it was 12 years later that the federal government designated those new lands as federal reserves. But prior to that, the people were cast aside. All the promises that Alcan made, all the promises that DIA made, her grandfather, Michelle, would go to the Indian agent and says, where's my new house? Where's my livestock I left at Cheslatta? Where's my barns? And the Indian agent would tell her grandfather, I'm sorry, but you have no reservation land. I'm not responsible for you. So this went on for 12 years until the government finally created the Indian reservations, and the people became eligible at that time for housing. But as everybody knows, the housing on reserve is a pretty bad outlet. Anyway, the worst thing that happened to the Cheslatta people is they were told that the cemetery at the west end of Cheslatta Lake would be a safe place to, and Chief Louis had died and was buried in that cemetery. Michelle Charlie's son had drowned. He was buried there, and 2 more people were recently buried. Because this one was going to be underwater, they dug up Chief Louis and 3 other people and moved them to the west end, and we buried him in the cemetery on the hillside. When they opened up the gates to the Skins Lake Spillway in 1956, all of those graves were washed into Cheslatta Lake. Over the years, this cemetery that sits in the middle of that picture was half of that was washed away and eroded, and all the remains were washed into Cheslatta Lake. The cemetery at Belgachuk, there was a large village where Knapp Creek flows into the lake. This is where the Charlies lived, and the Peters and the Georges. And there was another large church that was built in 1915 there, and another cemetery over here. And again, all these houses in the church were burnt down by Alcan and the Indian agent. So, as a result of being downstream of an industrial spillway, every year, like clockwork, and you can still see remnants of this year's flood, this area will be flooded because they have to dump a lot of water to keep the salmon alive. To this day, the Cheslatta Lake is still used as a fish protection measure. People don't count here. It's all about the salmon. In 2007, the water came up to this level, record heights. So all of you people would be underwater in 2007. 6 years ago, in 2015, the water came up this high because of the unusual high water. Jesse and I canoed from over at the cemetery and we took pictures of this fire ring from above it. So this land has suffered horribly. Even though it's a beautiful piece of land, it suffered, but the Cheslatta people themselves went through generations of trauma, and it was only recently that Cheslatta actually got this land back in fee simple form. We went to Alcan and says, you guys took our land away, we want it back. It took 10 years, but they finally agreed. They gave us they returned all the land along the Cheslatta River to us, as well as the old village sites. So today now, Cheslatta people, all of the Cheslatta people own this land collectively under fee simple title. We're also working to eliminate the Skins Lake Spillway, and and the annual flows. You notice the water today when you go down to the lake, it's crystal clear. This is what it looks like every year. It turns chocolate brown. The cemetery, when the water reached this elevation, the cemetery that you drove by when you came in was completely underwater. And if you look close, you can see the graves underneath each white cross. And the cross that you see out here, this is a picture of it looking this way. And you'll see where we are right now is all underwater. So we're working together with, we have a formal partnership now with Notley, Stalaco, Stalatan, and Sycas, and believe it or not, Alcan. And we're finally coming to terms on a business arrangement to build the spillway at Kenny Dam, where it should have been built 70 years ago. So we're working hard to alleviate the flood problems and to reestablish jurisdiction and ownership of the land that was taken away back in 1952. So there's a lot of information I lost there, but if people have any questions or any questions, I'll try to answer them. We have achieved a settlement with Alcan, and we've achieved a settlement with British Columbia over the flood that are providing benefits now and provide certainty for the future of Cheslatta for generations to come. Big camp out in 1994. It was that day that her grandfather, Michelle, was presented with a drum in July of '94. And we have a film of him playing that drum. And it was the very first time that a drum had sounded at Cheslatta Lake since 1952. And it was also the year earlier that the Catholic Church came out here and reconsecrated the cemeteries, and in a big ceremony at Cheslatta Lake officially designated Cheslatta Lake as an official cemetery and resting place. So every year we still find partial remains, human remains along the lake shore. Last year we recovered remnants of 4 skulls. We found 4 different times people brought in leg bones. So there's still that constant reminder of the trauma of the flooding. Dustin brought in a bone, and Cody brought in bones. So when you're walking around Cheslatta, keep your eyes open for old stone artifacts. When you're on the shoreline, keep your eyes open for different things that may show up there.
Tell them to check Dad.
Fossils, yes. Ted's gonna take you guys over across the lake, and there's a very unique geological formation when the volcanoes were rampant, and there's one right there, it's called Taiyu Butte. But there was molten lava, and there's a good example of it over there where it's like you're stirring a big pot of toffee, and it's just layered after layered. And Abel Peters talks about going over that same spot with Chief Louis in their dugout canoe. And Abel would dive down and pick up chunks of coal and bring it up and throw it into Chief Louis' canoe. And kids did that all the time, and they would use that coal in their fires. And for the really athletic people, there's a trail that goes back up on the hill here, and there's a cemetery up on the hill and a monument that Alcan put up with a plaque on it. We led the procession over to the cemetery.
Yeah.
And we've got some great pictures of that.
A lot of our cultural songs they weren't allowed to be sung, they weren't allowed to be practiced. And my Louis family kept a big part of that with them. And they taught a lot of other drum groups and stuff that are going around, like the drummers from Lately Tene, as well as Psychas and all the other drummers. And we have recordings of my great-grandmother, Alu. We have recordings of her drumming as well. And a lot of songs that belong to different clans. My dad will carry those songs still to today. And they actually have a CD out there. So. And that's what a lot of people use to practice and learn their clan songs, because a lot of people didn't know their clan songs anymore. Yeah, so I didn't practice the drumming. I was the baby of the family. I didn't have
Is this yours, Mike? Is this yours, Mike?
No, it's Stefan's.
Oh, yeah.
That's mine. We'll go up there.
Oh,
Craig, you're welcome.
Oh, I'm good.
So I had to wake up my mom for dinner and back home. My stepdad had to clean it up.
Yeah. And Janet knows lots about the history.
Quit with your videos, you stupid.
We built this dock about 4 or 5 years ago. We usually stick it in the water every year for our annual camp out, but COVID kind of ruined that this year again, so yeah. Here's all the mountain ranges around Cheslatta Lake.
the big one Adele still got.
And then, yeah, I talked to him.
Yeah,
Is that good background?
yeah,
Take home?
it's cool.
Okay, let's go over there now.
But they also saw the sage planted here. The Mohawk people did some ceremonies, and they said, keep this because this is part of us in your territory. So that's the significance of this sage. And when the water came up and you see a mark on the cross, that's how high it came. My wife came down here and dug it all up because she was certain with the flood it would kill the sage once it fell. So after the water went down, she came back down with some people and they replanted this. It's been here ever since. So I think Hazel's encouraging you kids and everybody to take some of this sage, and it regenerates, so you're not going to take too much. So please do take some and keep it with you. And that's the relationship between the Mohawk and Cheslatta.
Thanks, Mikey.
Thanks, Mike.
That would be us.
Well, it was a good day today. Nice little outing we had. Barbecue and a boat ride. Nothing wrong with that.